All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Johanna Hadaba. I'm the chair for the ASIS Risk Intelligence Community. This is our first quarterly briefing. We're hoping to start doing this every quarter so that we can really get everyone up to date on what the community has been up to. And in terms of questions during this meeting, I am juggling a lot of the screens that I'm viewing, but feel free to use the chat. At the end, there will be time for questions. If I don't manage to get to your question in the chat during the slide that it's pertinent to, I'm happy to go back, but I will be endeavoring to monitor both so that we can do as smooth a presentation as possible. I'm going to leave everyone muted just for the moment, but again, at the end, there will be time for questions. So with this presentation, one of our aims has been really to increase transparency into what the steering community has been up to and to increase opportunities for the community to get together and to get to know one another. So while this meeting will be mostly me talking, the plan is very much for each quarterly meeting for you to be able to hear more from other steering committee members as well, each of them focusing on different areas, and also to start hosting events where you'll be able to get to know one another and to potentially collaborate and increase your networks. Please do use the chat as Anthony Burton is doing in the chat to introduce yourself, say where you're from, say anything that you're specifically interested in for risk intelligence, and use it to chat. We certainly welcome that opportunity. So today's agenda will be to introduce our steering committee so you know who we are. You can also use the chat. I've been trying to, as people were in the waiting room, note steering committee members in their name. Anyone joining after this, please, and who is a steering committee member, please do feel free to update your name to note that you are one of the steering committee members. We also will introduce our name change. As you might have noticed, we are no longer operational intelligence, so I'll walk you through the logic there and our aims with that. A mission statement that we have just recently started rolling out, a steering committee projects that we're currently working on, and then events that you might be interested in, recommended reading, and how to stay connected with us. So those later areas, what we're currently working on, events and recommended reading, are things that we are very much planning on increasing and really showing different opportunities for you as steering committee members as we move forward. So here is a brief slide on our steering committee members. We have myself, obviously, as I just introduced myself. Thiago Uli is our vice chair. He'll be joining us in a few minutes as well. Felice Flake, our secretary. And then Kevin and Jim are our co-chairs for events this year. Jim, you might have met last year during events, and now Kevin is really helping support him and co-chairing for events moving forward, as well as all of our other wonderful steering committee members that I hope you get to know in the next coming year. Apologies if you hear sirens in the background. There's a bit of our road has a lot of emergency vehicles on it. That said, so our focus has been also to increase our international presence and representation on the steering committee. We've managed to move it to encompass a lot more of the Americas and finally someone in Europe. And we're hoping to really further that next year. So we always are looking for new steering committee members to join us in 2027. And we are especially hoping to get a bit more representation across EMEA and especially APAC, because we are a bit lacking in that account right now and trying to make up for it. So with our name change, operational intelligence was our previous name. We found that it often misrepresented our remit, and it created a lot of confusion. People who thought we were really focusing on different areas like investigations, and it also involved a lot of mission creep with other ASIS communities. We wanted to really emphasize that we are looking at capturing strategic decision-making support, not just operations, although certainly including operational support, and using a name that is widely recognized in the industry, globally recognized, and distinguishing obviously away from business intelligence or cyber threat intelligence to focus on risk intelligence. We also felt that using the name risk right in our name was helpful to encourage discussions about risk versus threat and other things where we really want to help foster those discussions. Just making sure there's no questions specifically. Perfect. with a mission statement. And I really want to call out Kevin Weeks as one of our steering committee members who has helped really encourage and champion the idea of a mission statement, as well as what we'll introduce in a moment, a watch list. So a special call out thank you to him for this. And after discussion amongst the steering committee, we came up with a mission statement of to advance global risk intelligence best practice and community through leadership and providing a space where practitioners can meet and collaborate. The aim with having this mission statement is to just focus in our steering committee so that we can know where the priorities are essentially for the community and to create stability moving forward in years to come. We also, and again, I want to say a special thank you to Kevin Weeks as well as G.I. Wilson, who were instrumental in helping create the idea of this watch list and championing it. We have decided to have what's called a risk intelligence watch list with pertinent topics we'll be focusing on as a steering committee. This will be the basis of our annual programming priorities and help trigger research, events, guidance, and other outputs. With these 9 items, and we'll be aiming to have a maximum of 10 at any given time, we consider strategic impact, cross-border implications, corporate exposure, intelligence, methodology implications, and the fact that they are forward-looking. We don't want to be a retrospective, news tracker or provide retrospective commentary. And it's not just a random topic repository or a personal interest list. We wanted to make sure it was very much had a global remit and global focus that had a lot of overlap for our members. So these may change over time, and in fact, they should change potentially. But we wanted to focus on 9 that do have lasting continuity. So sometimes things will shift. These are not in order. So the first one is our first priority, but after that, they are not in a specific order. We talked about the potential of having them in order, but what it came down to was it was so dependent on exact context in terms of where these would fall for any given member, depending on location, industry, exact time period, so many different areas. And to provide a little bit more context for each, the the intelligence methodology and tradecraft includes the evolution of this. So areas such as automation versus analytic judgment, such topics as ethical boundaries in corporate intelligence, private intelligence standards and professionalism. It's a huge area, and it is, as I said, the one area where we will say that is quite a top priority because of who we are as ASIS and trying to take a leadership role to coordinate discussions about this. Outside of that, we have disinformation and misinformation, focusing on inherent with the collection and analysis of data and the huge influx of both mis and disinformation, and the increasing ease of creating and disseminating this information, especially with AI automation. And there I should note, there is obviously quite a lot of overlap between the categories in some areas. We don't see that as a negative thing, just more of an inherent thing. For example, misinformation and disinformation in cyber physical security, or geopolitical instability and power shifts, or geopolitical stability and supply chains. There will always be some overlap there. We also are looking at power shifts and civil unrest. Geopolitically, but separated out from that topic because it also will include things like growing political divisions domestically and internationally within countries, and increasing wealth inequality, especially as automation increases, and the implications of those topics on civil unrest moving forward. We also have corporate espionage on here. I felt that was worth calling out separately, although there is certainly a lot of overlap, for example, with insider risk. To include state-linked collection and information targeting corporations. We have cyber-physical security concerns. So that will include cybersecurity concerns, but really focus a lot on the lens of incorporating security convergence, and with a heavy focus on AI-enabled and enhanced security concerns. We have environmental and resource insecurity. This includes everything from extreme weather event clustering, water and other security conflicts, climate migration, insurance market retreat in high-risk regions, access to resources, and climate-driven operational shutdowns. So it's a huge topic, which a lot of us felt will increasingly be a topic that we'll be looking at. We also have disruptions to supply chain and critical infrastructure, especially given the impact that that has on operations. So this includes everything from regulatory and sanction volatility, as well as the topics such as marine choke points. And finally, we have insider risk, which looks at workforce radicalization, the mentioned overlap with corporate espionage. And all of these topics, the examples I gave were just that. They're examples, but they cover a further plethora of topics within each category. If you have input onto which we should be monitoring, if you think something isn't on the list and should be, or something you question is on the list, definitely feel free to reach out to us. We want community input on this. And at the end of the presentation, there will be ways to reach out to us. I'm not seeing any questions. I'm trying to make sure I'm monitoring the chat as well. So current projects we are working on. Firstly, we have the formalizing our processes. So this is one area that we focused heavily on in the last 3 months. It was the name change. It was our mission statement. It's the watch list that we're building and what all that will be driving. And we're also looking at creating an operational framework, maybe termed a charter. We're still working on what makes the most sense for an ASIS framework for that. We will be looking at defining risk intelligence, since that is always something that can be a challenge when talking amongst a large group. So we want something that makes as much sense for the wider community as possible. Creating standards of practice for our steering committee that include things like analytic rigor and establishing benchmarks for what we're monitoring. And we're also considering a code of ethics for the risk intelligence process that guards our steering committee, but that we can also publish because a lot of our focus will be to help form best practice and also incorporate the community, not just created by steering committee members, but collaboratively to try to create more resources for the wider community. For our events, we are aiming to resume the events from subject matter experts that you've gotten used to in the last few years, using that watch list of topics to help guide what type of areas we'll be focusing on. We're also planning events for community members to meet and network. So the kind of idea that's been floated is doing a drop-in coffee chat or drop-in, lunch break. Obviously, the time is a little tricky with that because of time zones, but maybe having a few at different times for community members to just chat, get to know each other. We're also planning collaborations with other communities. We see risk intelligence, one of our merits is how much security convergence there is across different communities. And pretty much every community we've talked to about this idea has been very receptive and very interested in moving forward with that. So we're hoping to move forward a lot with that. And a few of us are planning on attending GSX. We just recently had Kevin, who's one of our steering committee members, attend the Europe get-together. And quite a few of us, like I said, are hoping to go to GSX. And right now what we're looking at is whether we can host a kind of breakfast get-together so that risk intelligence professionals or professionals who work within, touching risk intelligence can get together and meet up more easily. Outside of that, we are also looking at providing resources, as mentioned. So this includes things like focusing on best practice and guidance, very much a long-term project. That's a multi-year project, but we're working closely with ASIS leadership to see what that looks like, what the best way forward is to provide real resources that can be lasting and help as many members as possible and the wider industry move forward. We're also looking at creating a resource list. If some of you are familiar with the US State Department's thing for foreign security officers, they have kind of like a reading list and so forth. Bellingcat has another resource guide. We're looking at doing something similar where we have recommended books, recommended articles, recommended, whether it's YouTube channels or chats or discussions, any kind of resources that would be helpful within risk intelligence. We are finalizing how that looks and then also looking at how we can roll this out for community members to add to it. And finally, we're looking at growing the community to provide a collaboration resource. This is things like the event where you would get to be able to chat with each other and put you in touch with each other more easily. But also, looking at other ways to collaborate more, how to find someone to co-write an article on, or if you are doing research, how to best get in touch with people who might be good research participant members. And yeah, I think that provides an overview of it. Again, feel free to put any questions into the chat for this. We'll next move on to some events that you can be on the lookout for that might be relevant to you, of interest to you. Firstly, obviously, GSX itself will be in Atlanta, Georgia from September 14th to 16th. This is open to ASIS volunteers already to sign up for. So if you're on our steering committee or another steering committee, it can be a local chapter or a community. Look out for the sign up already. And it will be opening soon for wider members to be able to sign up for. And as mentioned, we will be looking at trying to organize some kind of breakfast get together during GSX. There's also, as part of Member Appreciation Month last month, there's still a few days where you can get, I think it's 26%. I wonder if it's 26 or 25, but so don't quote me there, but there is a discount for ASIS ebooks at the moment. And I will be sharing this whole presentation later today as my aim, so that you can easily click on any links within this presentation. Next, there is an event called Security Lead Her, which advances to advance, connect, and empower women in security. That's on June 15th to 16th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Not intelligence specific, but there are certainly quite a few risk intelligence professionals attending there. And we have the ASIS Award of Excellence nominations. So I really want to encourage you, whether it is a individual you work with, someone you interact with at ASIS, a whole organization, a community that you think deserves recognition, do nominate them. I know it means I've nominated quite a few colleagues, and I think it's a really nice way of recognizing them, even if they don't get the final award. Getting nominated can be a very nice pat on the back for someone you work with or an organization you interact with. On the same line, the OSPAs, the Outstanding Security Performance Awards, are open for US nominations. They do also have nominations and awards for an increasing number of other countries, as well as, for example, a cybersecurity category that they opened. And there's an increasing number of categories within the awards. So if you know of an individual, a team, a vendor, a product, a company that you think is doing a really great job, it can be a nice thank you to nominate them. And then these links aren't clickable. They are just quick screenshots. But although the ASIS calendar is, just a reminder to check the ASIS calendar when you go on to Connects. I've screenshot a few things that looked relevant to risk intelligence professionals. The first is in person, but the other three are all virtual and sound like they might be really relevant and interesting events for risk intelligence members. That's the last events I have for today to highlight, but I really want to call out this section. If your local chapter is hosting something, if one of your other communities is hosting something, if it's not ASIS specific, but general members in general can attend, please do let us know so that we can share it for our next quarterly meeting. And if it's before then, still feel free to let us know, post on Connects so that you can connect with our members to let them know about them. Next, I'm going to briefly touch on recommended reading. This is usually I won't be presenting this, but I wanted to introduce the section, so today I'll be introducing it. It's essentially an opportunity for us to call out whether it is a book or an article, something that we think would be a good read or a good resource for our members. To share that. We also really encourage you to reach out. So if you have a book or an article or something that you want to call out as being an interesting and recommended resource for our members, let us know. I'm happy for non-steering committee members to present a recommended reading, a text or resource in future as well. So today's I wanted to call out was a very recent publication by Louis Sage Passant called Beyond States and Spies, and it specifically focuses on private sector risk intelligence. It's very relevant. It's very well researched and written. It shows a clear understanding and comprehensive understanding of what the private sector risk intelligence industry is like. And some areas that I wanted to call out as being particularly strong were defining private sector intelligence with an eye on the audience rather than the producer of the intelligence, since there are so many different producers of intelligence and there's such variety across industries and corporations. The need and importance of regulation, raising awareness over real and tangible ethical debates in private sector intelligence. And this was because it was published this year, it is very up to date on this topic. And providing a well researched history of the topic, which was eye opening to me in terms of just how this really isn't a new industry. It's just that we're looking at professionalizing more and more and kind of coming to best practice discussions and such more and more, rather than doing kind of working in silos. And then a very robust literature review, which is a good resource in and of itself to find other resources. So I highly recommend this one. And like I said, if you have recently read something or come across a resource, please do let us know. And whether we'll add that to the general resource guide or whether it might be a thing that you would be interested in presenting or in one of us presenting on your behalf if you'd prefer, we very much welcome that. Next, we do have, you can connect to us on Connects. You can also connect to us on LinkedIn. This is our LinkedIn URL as well as a QR code that should take you to the page. And it's just another way of getting in touch and communicating with other members. We know that not everyone likes to go use Connects. Not everyone likes to be on there every day. A lot of our industry work more on LinkedIn, frankly. So if you prefer LinkedIn or Connects, we have both. We're on both to be able to reach us. And that said, actually, I think if not all, most of the steering committee members are on there as well. So feel free to connect with any and all of us. At the end, I will go, the last slide will be how to connect with us, but I can go back to the member side too, so you can get a list of our steering committee members. The other option is to just go on Connects, and you should be able to see our steering committee members there. So with that, I kind of zoomed through a lot of information, but I also want to leave room for questions. Apologies for how fast I go through. I do have a tendency to speak quite quickly, but the information will be on recorded and available later to go back to. So if you have any questions, I'll be opening that up in just a moment. Feedback, again, book recommendations or wanting to publicize events, that is something we love to hear about. And we can be contacted on Connects, LinkedIn, as well as a specific email that both Thiago, our vice chair, and I have access to and can be reached out to. So with that, I am going to thank you for the feedback on areas that you are excited for. And I am going to change the host settings briefly so that members can unmute themselves. But I will ask if you could raise your hand if you have a question that you would like to say. I will be looking for raised hands for any questions. And yep, and that's a great suggestion from Scott. I will go back to the watch list so that if any questions, but I think that's the area that might have the most questions or feedback. So you should see that now. Thank you, Scott, for that suggestion. All right, and I'll just open it up. So, right, since we have no raised questions, if you just want to unmute yourself, if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to just unmute yourself rather than raising a question. All right, no problem. I will take that as we are going a direction you're not too upset about, since I feel like I would get more feedback if there was anything that was, completely in the wrong direction. So I thank you for that. Anthony Burton, I do see your hand up. Let me unmute you.
Good morning, Joanna. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Can you
Johanna,
hear
yeah.
me?
Yes, I can. Oh,
Okay.
okay. Good.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. First and foremost, I want to thank you for taking your time out to sit in the position and the authority of giving this presentation to us. It's very important and vital for all of us to be involved in what's going on in the world that we live in today and to break open the silos that we live in. So looking at what the young man suggested as far as going to the watch list, there's a couple of things that I see here. And first, I want to address the geopolitical instability.
Hmm.
So when it comes to geopolitical instability, and of course, everything is driven by your geographic location and the culture within that geographic location. Do you guys have anything actually in place as far as measuring those matrices and what's going on and how that's blending and influencing what's happening in the world today? Is there anyone tracking that? And if so, um, how is that going to be distributed to the individuals that's involved within this group?
Yeah, that's a great question. So firstly, there is nothing we are currently as a committee tracking. That's really why we felt like the first step was just saying like, okay, what are the priorities? And then it's what's the methodology to track those in a very much best practice way. Now, I'm sure a lot of us on the call are tracking these from our own business perspectives, and looking at them through our corporations or companies or whoever our employer is. And the next step is very much to say, okay, well, what's working well? What have we seen as best practice in tracking these and in disseminating them? Because absolutely, it's not just tracking and monitoring and analyzing, especially given the added challenge of the fact that we are coming from a global perspective. Oftentimes a corporation has the specific, context of that corporation, whereas we'll be in a way we'll be forced to be extra focused on doing things like speaking with objectively, because we need to make sure that the context makes sense regardless of where the member reading this is sitting. And so, yeah, does that answer your question? We're basically, the next step will be
It it
to
it
do.
it does. It does. You're definitely speaking in the direction that I wanted you to go, which actually that helps transition me into, as I'm looking at the watch list, into my next area of concern. Just bear in mind, everyone, I was always that kid that always asked the question, why? If you gave me the answer, I still would ask, well, why is that? Well, why is that? So if there's someone that needs to jump in, please jump in. But other than that, I want to take the opportunity to draw everything that I can out of this session. Um,
Absolutely.
so, so with that being said, I understand what you're saying because it's culturally driven and it's the geopolitical instability is always based on the geographic area and your culture. So, in order to measure that, you have to track that. So I was wondering if that, so that leads me into the disinformation and the misinformation piece
Mhm.
that's listed on this list. With the advent of everything that's going on, and now that it's hard for you to believe what you see, with the new and younger generation who they are our future, and we have to understand how they're thinking, and we have to be able to convey and communicate wisdom to them to help them foster wise decisions because they will be making decisions for us as they transition into positions of leadership and we start to retire. So when it comes to the disinformation and the misinformation and the advent of AI and its capabilities and what it's doing and it's able to do, is there any way, my question is there any way that we're tracking or have the ability to communicate and to convey what is actual and factual and what is not, as far as the perspective for your committee? Have you guys considered that at all?
We haven't, I mean, any question you ask, we haven't necessarily spoken to in exactly that context. So what I will say is, and again, this is kind of speaking as chair rather than having conferred with the whole steering committee, but
Yes, Chair.
speaking from my own perspective, it would be very hard to publish the actual news items. I think that would go, especially because all of us are doing that on a voluntary basis. I think what we can focus on is how to, what capabilities exist so that as many ASIS members are aware of just how far the capabilities have gotten in terms of misinformation and disinformation. What kind of deep fake, especially audio, but also video capabilities there are at this point, to, as far as possible, advertise the things that have been shown to be misinformation and disinformation campaigns, just so that to really raise everyone's awareness. Because one of
Hmm.
the best ways to counter this is to raise awareness about it. A lot of people just aren't aware
Yes.
how far those capabilities have come. And then also to look at best practice mitigations and what various options there are to counter disinformation and misinformation. I think that's
Hmm.
more the directions we can help support wider
Hmm.
communities, is the overall,
Yes.
the one level up, rather than saying, like, this news item is correct, this news item is wrong. Um,
Right.
Certainly maybe we'd have a page on the Connects site, like a discussion group where it's like, hey, proven misinformation or disinformation, to help people
Hmm.
have a resource where they can post, here's a proven something that's not correct, so that people can reference
Hmm.
that. But the other direction, trying to post, here are the authenticated items,
Hmm.
would be a full-time job. In fact, it would be a whole, company's full-time job, let alone kind of single steering committee members.
Well, actually, I'm excited because this is actually the first time I linked in with this group. So the thing is that based on what you said, and me being the retired bomb squad commander here in the city of Las Vegas and dealing with the explosive dynamics and this and that, and every time that I've gone down on a bomb scene, an active bomb or this and that and stuff, I always, once I return back safely, I look at and I assess everything. And of course, nothing is produced without the human psychology, right? So that right there leads me to the last thing. And then, because I can ask you questions about all of this stuff on here, but I want to stop at the insider risk and the
Mhm.
psychology actually of humanity. And as a former bomb squad commander, the most explosive and dynamic thing after being over actual bombs is the human psychology. So when it comes to the human psychologies and the capabilities of what's going on, and in particular, I'm speaking to number nine, the
Mhm.
insider risk, because the insider risk, it always comes from the human dynamic.
Mhm.
And then, of course, vetting through that and filtering out what potentially could be dangerous to society, to the business, and what your mission and all that stuff is, and actually vetting and filtering through that. Are there any members in the group or whatever? And if not, the people that's listening to me, we need to try to factor in this. That's going to be assessing the mental status of what's going on in society and in our culture and how to track that trend and what's
Mhm.
going on and essentially how to neutralize or mitigate that. Is that a consideration that you guys have looked at?
Um, this is just the first initial. We've just agreed on the watch list, essentially. So we haven't really done a deep dive into each category yet.
Okay.
Certainly, part of insider risk is the vulnerabilities, that the risk indicators that
Yes, dear.
inform, what makes someone a likely insider risk, as well as then the technology and as well as the policies within an organization to help identify those, and then all the actions they take, the various risk indicators, all those there's so many areas to this. We
Um,
There
Yes.
is a whole community specifically focused on human threat, and a lot of
Yes, dear.
focus is on insider risk. So we also are conscious of not just completely focusing on someone, another community's area.
Yes,
That
dear.
said, we also have, that's actually that is the group we have currently the furthest in discussions about doing a collaborative event, specifically on something like, insider risk. So,
Thank you,
so,
dear.
so to build on that, Nicholas Plus here, I actually have a self-similar question, or a question that builds on that. In essence, everything on this risk intelligence watch list, uh, more or less, aside from exterior state actors, most of these boil down to the potential insider risk. We look at Google, Microsoft. We've had employees making vocal statements, walking out, refusal. So it's definitely more polarized, and all of that data is obviously useful and trackable. Are we paying any mind or consideration to trying to prevent something akin to McCarthyism or the Red Scare, where we're cataloging, canonizing, and creating like a, for lack of a better term, a list of forbidden, or the old FBI term was deviant behaviors. So, suppose Michael's an anti-war hippie, but he does excellent IT work for us. But all of a sudden, well, his feelings about this. So we're in a risk of creating that, in bringing back that kind of inquisitorial monitoring, which in attempting to detect risk, we are in fact pushing actual adverse actors into a more subtle layer and suppressing the ability to actually express, communicate, and to establish what normal baseline behaviors would be. Because we've all worked with an eccentric engineer who, if all of a sudden you tell people you're monitoring what they're due, their productivity is going to drop, and they're also just not going to actively participate.
yeah, I mean, I think it's a very real and worthy discussion to have about whether it is insider risk. And, the kind of examples you were suggesting for me very much also smack of the power shifts. It's not just power shifts and civil unrest, but it's also power shifts and insider risk. Um, so we haven't had discussion yet, but these are any discussions like that. I want to sort within, these topics. The watch list is just a broader category, and then within that, it can lead to those types of discussions. So yeah, I think it's a worthy point to really dive down deep into more. And it is a concern,
So,
especially if you're looking at, the U.S. perspective, the growing political divides and,
Because
you
like
know,
a key example would be, because I've worked for AWS, they're within our risk and security group assessment. After the Iranian conflict, there was a serious point where we were discussing like, what is the associated nationality, who has family ties, who's da 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 da, and it was like a. The reason I bring it up is because it was very pressing. Where I was in that meeting, going, hold on, we cannot engage in McCarthyism. Like,
yeah,
yes, we can scrub social media. Yes, we can look if anyone has presented anything potentially like problematic, but also
yeah.
like none of these employees have been anything except good for to us, and personal feelings are allowed to be personal feelings.
Yep. Yeah, I think that it's something that's worth us looking at and especially because ASIS isn't linked to a specific corporation. So it is something we can look at for providing guidance and figuring out, what does that look like? What does it look like to help people avoid going down that very slippery slope of ethics was definitely within the intelligence tradecraft area. So I think it also falls into that category of how do we avoid, as corporations, as industries, having us go down that route. So yeah, I think it's a very, noteworthy.
Miss Joanna,
Hmm.
Miss Joanna,
Yes.
can you hear me? Oh, this is Anthony again. I want to thank, I don't know who it is that's speaking, but he is on point in the contributions that he did to what we're doing today. But the key thing, did you go away, Jana? Are you still there?
I'm here. I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Your image went
Oh, no,
away, so
I'm
I'm
not sure.
sorry.
It
Okay.
just has our,
So,
our official close times. It might have
okay.
just
So, based on what he's saying and what I mentioned earlier about the human, like I said, the most dangerous thing is the human perspective. The insider risk actually is the portal that the threshold that once crossed leads to all of the other things that I see on the watch list. So, insider risk is the cornerstone of what we're measuring, right, in order to maintain safety. And what the young man that spoke talk about is something that we really need to be monitoring at all times and keeping a close eye on, because the unintentionally or intentionally, we're just one click away from being victimized. So, that leads to a ton of training, a ton of what's going on, what's happening out here in the world, what's the new trends and this and that. And it's about sharing information and coming out of your silos. So, what he said, and I think that as you guys as a committee look at that, everything that's there, the insider risk and the human perspective, I think is the building block of whatever you guys are going to roll out to the committee, to the participants from the committee. I think that should be a key element that you guys focus on, Ms. Joanna. And once again, thank you for having the courage and standing and being in this position.
Thank you so much. So yeah, just to briefly answer that, and then I'll need to close the call, unfortunately. Although I'd love to, I'll close it for recording. I can stay on to help chat or anyone who wants to discuss more. But to answer your specific statement, I would say that insider risk is definitely one of the, if not the biggest vulnerability for organizations, because it can, no matter how good your security is, insider risk really has a way of undermining security in general. And there's aspects of most of these that touch on insider risk, or which can help lead to or be used by insider risk. But a lot of the categories also work outside of insider risk. So it also, for example, civil unrest in your areas, it's work being blocked, and supply chain issues. There are issues from outside of your or an organization, from your customers or from clients or from the areas you're operating in. So that's why they're not all within insider risk. We're not insider risk focused, but we definitely acknowledge how instrumental and how critical insider risk is to overall security. So with that, I thank you all for joining. I am going to stop this recording so that we'll be able to share this hopefully later today, if not later in the next few days. And I'm happy to stay on the call to answer more questions or to chat, but I'll save anyone who wants to go and get more of their time back as well. So I will end the recording now.